Yeah, great. So I didn't have to raise my hand this time. Sometimes I have to do the old hand raise thing to get everybody to quiet down, but you all well behaved tonight. So welcome to Lean Agile Edinburgh. Thank you very much for coming along. My name is Stephen McCainch. I'm one of the organisers at Lean Agile Edinburgh, and we'll touch on some other organisers in a few moments. So a quick show of hands. Is this anybody here for the very first time? Good. So welcome. So everybody else has been here several times? Yep. Yeah, great. So those that are here for the very first time, welcome. Hope to see you again. And for those that have back in, so welcome back. I hope you keep on coming. So for those that don't know, Lean Agile Edinburgh, we've been going for about 6 years. We're a meet-up group, obviously in Edinburgh. We run round about every month, doing evenings like this, where I talk. Sometimes we do open sessions, like Lean coffee sessions, and sometimes we do workshops, a bit of a mixed bag. We're always open to new ideas and feedback and what people want to hear going forward. So I don't know if anybody's noticed, but if you go to the meetup page and click on About Us, you've got to click Show More or something like that, then you'll see in there's a little link there where you can actually submit an idea for a talk or a workshop. So we'd really welcome everybody to give it a go. We're a friendly bunch, so you want to try something out, you've got an idea, please find that link, click on it, and it comes to the organisers. Also in that little blurb there, you'll probably notice there's a little link to our code of conduct, and we've got a couple of posters out there for that as well. So in brief, be nice to each other, respect the speaker, and respect the venue in brief. Yeah. So on the note of the venue, normally at this stage, I'd be passing across to somebody from the venue to talk about anything we need to talk about here, but unfortunately our Lloyd's contact has had to go home. So from what I know, the toilets are across there. If anybody needs to lose after the talk. I have no idea there's going to be a fire drill, I'm guessing not. Yeah.
All the security guards out.
Yeah. I do know they put on some very nice pizza and drinks, so a big thank you to Lloyd's Banking Group for doing that. It's much appreciated. And to this is the first time at this venue, and it's a lovely area and it's a very nice setup. So I think we'll probably be back here again at some point in the future. I do know Lloyd's have some banners up. They're obviously recruiting, and so some information there to go and have a look at for anything about Lloyd's, etc. Is there anybody else in the audience from Lloyd's want to say anything? Yeah.
I was just going to say, if anybody is looking for a job and is curious about Lloyd's, then come and have a wee chat to me, and I'll give you a talk. I'll give you the good and the bad.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Thanks very much. Lean Agile Edinburgh is run by some volunteer organisers. I'm one of them. We also have Laz as another organiser. I'd like to announce tonight we actually have a new organiser who's joined our ranks very recently, and this is Suzanne Morrison. So, Suzanne has very recently joined us, so we're delighted to have Suzanne on board as an organiser.
Thank you.
And she's been at Lean Agile Edinburgh for many years.
3 or 4 years now, I think.
Yeah. So, great. Yeah.
And I'm really happy to be an organiser in this very well organised group.
Great. Sometimes they might. Behind the scenes, there's always a little bit, Yeah. Great. So I'm actually going to pass over to Suzanne, who's going to introduce our speaker.
Indeed.
Let's pass over that little thing.
Okay, I'm really excited this evening to introduce our speaker, who's come all the way from the US of A, Michael Spayd. I first met Michael back in 2015 when I travelled to Boston. I had the privilege of attending his Coaching Agile Teams workshop, and I can with absolute certainty say it was the most impactful and transformational training that I've ever attended, and it's really managed to set off my Agile coaching career in the right way with the right foundations and the right principles, and to this day I still follow all the techniques and the principles that I learned in that course. I'm really excited to hear what he has to say today, and I think Laz has something to add as well.
If one person saying how wonderful Michael is isn't enough for you, here's a second. So Suzanne went on the course in Boston and then came back, and she was so enthusiastic and transformed by it that she persuaded our boss at the time to bring Michael and Lisa over to Skyscanner to run the training for our whole team. And for those of you who remember, 2016 was an Olympic year, and for some of you who've heard me talk about this before, I said that watching Michael and Lisa conduct that training course was like watching Olympic athletes. It was like watching people who are just real masters of their craft, doing something they enjoy doing and doing it very, very well. The layering of delivering content, which they obviously have a deep mastery of, through facilitation and coaching, which they also were demonstrating as they were doing it, was just great to watch and be part of. So it's great to see Michael again and to hear what you got to say. Cool. I think we're leaving that.
Yeah. So if everyone wants to just put your hands together and give Michael a warm Scottish welcome.
Wow, that was unexpected. It's a good way to start. So, possibly nothing about this tonight is going to be usual. Starting with the fact that I have a beer. Can we just, this is an unusual request, but it's part of my tradition. Can we just sit and breathe with each other for a couple minutes? If you'll just adopt an erect posture and focus on your breathing for just a couple minutes, and focus on opening up your heart to people in this room. Thank you. I'd like to thank, I've originally reached out to Suzanne about the idea that I was coming here. I was just taught a enterprise coach boot camp in the Azores. In the US we call it Azores, and now I know to call it Azores, or Azores, if you prefer. And I was going to be teaching in Stockholm on Wednesday, so I thought, does it make sense to go back to the US for 11 days and then come back again? No. I'm going to my ancestral homes of Ireland and Scotland. I never made it to Ireland. They didn't respond to my request. I'll get them next time. So I came to Scotland, and I'm very pleased that I did. I've been here since Tuesday. But I really so thank you very much for having me. Appreciate that. Sort of last minute. I conceived of this talk. This is sort of the first and it's sort of the second of a series in what I'm calling a path with heart. And I did it last Monday in a pub in London, and there were two that came. That was exactly the right. It was been ready to do tonight. So I'm making this into a series that I do in lots of places that I go, and maybe. Thing about a story in the context of living a life that's a path with heart. So I'm hoping that you will be able to apply it to yourself through the example of me. Not that you're going to do what I did, but just to get a sense of the issues that we struggle with, to get a reflection of what you struggle with. You know, should I stay at this organization? How many people have ever questioned that? How many people are questioning that right now? Don't look any if you work there. You know, you're struggling with the question, am I on a path with heart? And I'll tell you a little bit more what I'm talking about with that. What do I need to talk more clearly into the mic? Go ahead. We're live streaming, you know. And more important, so I want this to be a reflection point for you and maybe some interesting tales. I've been an Agile coach for 18 years now. How many people are Agile coaches in the room? How many people are Scrum Masters, which might or might not be that? And how many people are product owners? Whoa, a nice and impressive contingent. And how many people are some kind of Agile manager or leadership? I see they're more reluctant to raise their hands. That's when I pick it up. Testers, developers, troublemakers. Come on, I want to see more hands than that. Jeez. All right. Actually, the other thing I want to know, so I'd like to hear from maybe 3 people why you came tonight. What was important to you about coming to this talk? Somebody be willing to share? Yes, sir.
Yeah, it is my first time coming to this meeting, but we're starting. What we do is develop a software platform for smart collaboration, and that is what our focus is sort of humanity within workplace.
Yeah, humanity within workplace.
So that's why we're here.
And like the title of it or the description of it? Or?
The description is a combination of Agile, business, and art.
Yeah, okay, good. Good, thank you. What's another one? Yes.
I am a lead thinker in
Third sector? What's that? Okay. Yes.
This concept of thinking, agile thinking, and heart is very resonant.
Good, thank you.
Started to get burned by the scaled Agile framework, so I'm trying to reconnect with Agile roots.
Reconnect to Agile roots. Okay. So, I never met this man, Carlos Castaneda. How many people have heard of Carlos Castaneda? Probably nobody. One guy, excellent. Anybody else? One woman. Carlos Castaneda was a anthropology student at UCLA in California. And he wanted to study Yaqui Indians, and I can't remember what he was studying at first, but he ended up finding a shaman, medicine man, who took him under apprenticeship for a long, long time. Some people believe that Carlos made the whole thing up and he was just writing a metaphor or a novel. I think that's rubbish. You can have your own opinion. So I'm going to read you this very long quote. It's 3 screens because I think it's really important and it sets the tone. he would ask, his teacher was named Don Juan, and Don Juan Matas, and he would always flummox Carlos. He would always annoy him, scare him, freak him out, push him into a corner. And that was his teaching style with Carlos. He had different teaching styles with different students. And I don't remember the context of this, but the quote has stuck with me. I read this in the 1970s, and which gives you an idea how old I am. So, anything is one of a million paths. Therefore, you must always keep in mind that a path is only a path. If you feel you should not follow it, you must not stay with it under any conditions. So think about that, those of you who are considering changing your organization. To have such clarity, you must lead a disciplined life. Only then will you know that any path is only a path, and there is no affront to oneself or others in dropping it, if that is what your heart tells you to do. But your decision to keep on the path or to leave it must be free of fear or ambition. Now that's really hard. I warn you, look at every path closely and deliberately. Try it as many times as you think necessary. If you're struggling with where you're staying, consider that you're re-upping. Rather than let it be a passive decision that you're staying where you are, make it an active decision. I'm going to stick it out another month. Don't play like you don't have responsibility. You have complete responsibility for everything you do. We just pretend we don't. Only a very old man asks, so. This question is one that only a very old man asks. Does this path have a heart? All paths are the same. They lead nowhere. They are paths going through the bush or into the bush. In my own life, I could say, if I have traversed long, long paths, but I am not anywhere. Does this path have a heart? If it does, the path is good. If it doesn't, it is of no use. Both paths lead nowhere, but one has a heart, the other doesn't. One makes a joyful journey. As long as you follow it, you are one with it. The other will make you curse your life. One makes you strong, the other weakens you. Before you embark on any path, ask the question, does this path have a heart? If the answer is no, you will know it, and then you must choose another path. The trouble is nobody asked the question. And when a man or a woman finally realizes that she has taken a path without a heart, the path is ready to kill her. At that point, very few men or women can stop to deliberate and leave the path. A path without a heart is never enjoyable. You have to work hard even to take it. On the other hand, a path with heart is easy. It does not make you work at liking it. This has been my struggle for all my life, is what's a path with heart. And I have been through part of the reason that I wanted to tell this story, and I have no idea what I'm going to say tonight. I didn't rehearse anything. I prepared a little bit. I prepared those slides, obviously, and maybe one more mainly. But I have no idea what's going to come out of me tonight. But I wanted to tell you something, give you some glimpse into the journey that I've been on for the last 3 years that has transformed me into living a very joyful life, living the fullest expression of myself. I've never been happier in my life. I'm doing exactly what I need to do. And the peace of that is just beyond articulation. And I want to encourage you that that's very possible. It takes a lot of work. It's a pain in the ass, but it's very possible. Let's see. I'm not feeling this slide very much, but just to I introduced the integral framework into the Agile community in about 2013. Lisa and I and Michael Hammond redesigned our Coaching Agile Teams class to include integral in 2013, I think. And then we extended it in 2014 into enterprise coaching. And now Michelle Medora and I are finishing my book that I've been writing since the beginning of time. And these are the 4 quadrants. So just as a little bit of a marker that unless you're considering all these different perspectives, what I'm going to talk about is a lot about inner experience in this talk, right, in the upper left, the I quadrant. But it also applies to relationship consciousness. And the work that I've been doing to get to my path of joy has a lot to do with work in relationship consciousness and systemic constellations, which I may know something about. I may say something about, I don't know. And empirical thinking, where Agile is mainly manifest for us in the IT quadrant, the upper right, in practices, right? That's where but it's got a mindset to it, it's got a culture to it, it's got a structure potentially to it. So main point is that we each get trapped in one of these. We love it. I orient in the we quadrant. I orient toward relationships. So if I'm going to start something, I want to know, well, who's involved and what do they think? But if I'm oriented toward the it quadrant, which I'm not, but if you are, you're going to say, well, let's just get started. Let's just start acting. Let's just get some stuff done and we'll figure it out. If you're an it's-oriented person, systems thinking, you're going to say, I need to get the big picture before we go anywhere. And if you're an I-oriented person, you're going to say, well, I need to check in with myself. I need to find out if this is actually consistent with my values, if it's my deepest purpose, if it's what I need to do. So that's all well and good, except for it provides we get too limited in that. We don't think about the other perspectives, and they're all valid. There's no right perspective here, though we sometimes think so. Most arguments in the history of mankind have been between different perspectives. Empirical thinking, scientific materialism versus I, versus introspection or meditation or whatever. All right. So that'll have a little bit of meaning? Sure, why not? So these are some things that I might talk about, or you might want to ask about. I'll let you take a look at this list for a minute. Yeah, let's play audience choice. So who wants me to talk about one of these first?
Big Bang.
Which?
Big Bang.
Big Bang change. Okay, great. So I don't recommend Big Bang change, in case you can't tell from the way that's written. In 2001, I was a process engineer in a huge telecom, 50,000 people telecom, 5,000 people in IT, more than 200 teams. And they had 18-month delivery cycles or so, release cycles. And I was a process engineer working on, you know what the capability maturity model is? CMMI? So I was a CMMI. I mean, I got into it. It wasn't my religion or anything, but I was hired to do CMMI or CMM at that point. And then we got a new CIO. I won't name him, and he wanted to do XP, extreme programming. So this is so you don't remember 2001, most of you, because you weren't doing Agile software development then, unless you were one of the founders of it, because nobody was doing Agile software development then, except for if you went to an Uppsala conference, you might have been doing Agile, or you might have been doing XP. So nobody was doing it then. And it was considered a risk to just do it on a 7-person team, let alone, scaled Agile or, some craziness in the, or mission critical kind of things, right? It was extremely cutting edge. It was insane from most points of view. And this CIO said, we're doing XP. We're going from 18-month release cycles to, guess what? 90-day release cycles. Everybody, flash cut, ready, go. And my boss, I'll have to relate this to the Piranhas. So how's that for a name for a coaching team? We're the Piranhas. You know what a piranha is, right? Yep. That translates into Scottish. Just make sure you don't have a different word for it than I do.
Midge.
What?
Midgies.
Midgies? No, that's an inside joke. I don't get it, but I'm glad you guys do. In the west coast of Scotland, they walk in shorts?
No, just go walking on the west coast of Scotland in shorts. You'll become very, very familiar with midges.
Okay, got it. I think my people are from the west coast of Scotland. The name McDaniel, my grandmother was Lelia McDaniel. Does that sound like a west coast? Yeah. Or Ireland, so hard to know. Any guesses? Anybody know any McDaniels?
If it's mixed, it's Scottish.
Huh?
If it's mixed something, it's generally Scottish.
Okay. Good to know. I can only trace their ancestry as far back as, like to the early 1800s, but they were still in North Carolina in the U.S. So they came over earlier than that, so I don't know where they came from. Okay, so my boss, Carl, was a crazy man. His idea of a good time was going in a kayak, and he would talk about when you in a river with rocks, and when you turn over the kayak by accident obviously, and you hit your head on a rock, there's nothing that just kind of refreshes you and creates a brisk experience than banging your head on a rock. I just did that, right? I told Talis, my colleague from Findhorn, who I worked on systemic constellation work with. I told her that story because I ran into a brick wall just the other day and remembered my friend. So he stands up in a this is in an all hands meeting. There's hundreds of people on this all hands meeting, right? And the CIO calls an all hands meeting, and Elnor starts talking about XP, and Carl says, "Hey, my team's been doing XP for months, and we've been studying this. Can we get a little support down here?" Elnor calls him up right after that and says, "You're going to be in charge of the rollout." He didn't know jack about how to he knew he was a really good developer and he was a good leader actually, but he didn't know jack about rolling out. So the Piranha team, which I managed to sidle my way onto, or kind of maneuver my way onto from the CMM process team. I mean, that ship was going down, right? Boom, I'm over on the Piranha team. I was the only non-developer. Everybody else was a developer. A good developer, and our charge was to get all these teams up and running. And so that's crazy. Okay, there's nothing that makes sense about that. And you guys face the exact same kind of situations where when you have a coach how many people have coaches that support something like 30 teams or something? Anybody have that situation or been in that situation? Yeah, you don't want protecting the innocent. So when we have situations like that, that's just ridiculous. Don't do that. Yeah. So it was an unmitigated disaster from an organizational change point of view. But I wasn't in charge of it. So I mean, I was the lead of one of the offsite teams. We did these 4-day immersions of like truly immersing people in XP. We had them there from 8 in the morning to 9 at night for 5 days. It was a boot camp, and that was my first boot camp actually. I just realized, and we had them develop in their client environment on their real problem, And their executives, their VPs were coming in at the end of the, at the end of each iteration actually to see a demo. It was really high pressure, but it was really effective. I had a great time doing it. But from a change point of view, we couldn't offer people any support afterwards. It was insane, right? We gave them really good training, but then we left them high and dry, essentially. Now, for me in the central role, it was a hugely beneficial learning experience, because I could see some teams, were able to thrive doing that, and most teams floundered either a fair amount to a tremendous amount, and some of them faked it, and it was just crazy. And I actually, at the first Agile conference I went to in 2003, I was able to do a presentation on that, an experience report, and I was pretty harsh on them. Friends at that. Any follow-up about your situation? Who asked to that again?
So I've experienced all sorts. So I was very lucky. I was in Agile right at the start of it. Dynamic organisation used in subsequent. So that was early doors of Agile. The large organisations trying to look at Agile, as you say, the executive training, some teams succeed,
Yeah.
a better mix,
Yeah.
others fail.
Yeah, I don't think big bang change is a good idea at all. It's, you want to go in and do some pilots, and then you want to spread it out slowly, like you want to take on one business unit at a time. The problem is it becomes a really political thing, and different business units compete against each other, right? And the CEO doesn't have a clue about how to implement change, and so they just let whatever happen, or they're just not paying attention to it because nobody has focused them on, you've got to pay attention. If you're really going to do a transformation, who would an organizational transformation have to be led by, do you think? What level of leader? Yeah, somebody with a C in their title. But do they ever? Do they ever actually lead it? As opposed to, they might be the sponsor. They might write the check. Is that fair?
So in your example as well, that they change it, there's one failure, Agile, large organisations, not everything's Agile. Yes, the whole pipeline is coming in,
Right.
Agile,
Right.
funding models, Agile.
Right.
The big design, architecture is an Agile, I'm an architect, and it's a big design up front, big funding, so they fund it like a waterfall project, they're trying to do Agile.
Yeah, and they could use it as, do you all know Cynefin, Dave Snowden? A number of people do. In a simple environment, you predict and control, right? And you can do that, works. In a complicated environment, you can't. I can't remember what the thing is in complicated. In complex, you probe, you sense, and you respond. So you send out a probe and you see what happens with it. You don't have attachment to that's going to work. You go, ooh, let's do an experiment. Let's try doing Agile in this one team and see the problems in funding that it creates that we can then go look at, do an experiment on, tell the C person who's leading it, here's what happened. What do you think we should do next? Right? That's how you would do it. But that's not what we do, is it? We just let those things keep hitting their head against the wall. We complain about them. We feel like shit. We think they're idiots. I don't know. That's what I've seen. My takeaway from that in the context of this talk from being on the Piranha team is it's where I had a tremendous amount of fun leading these offsites because I had, actually I think there were 4 days, not 5 days. But big wigs in each development organization came in. There was a lot of pressure. It was like it was the opportunity to have a show, to have an event, to have a 3-ring circus kind of. And It's where I learned how to do boot camps. I realized, boot camps became very popular at Agile Coaching Institute, 5-day. It's where I learned how to do that kind of work and make it a dramatic experience for people and a deeply transformational experience for people. These didn't have as tight a container. Do you know what I mean when I say a container? Like the psychological safety and the team agreements and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like this is a container. This is a fairly loose container, but it's you all feel quite present in my experience so far, at least. You're here. It's actually it's a tremendously open container. It could be a disaster in here, right? It could. But there's something about this ceiling's lowness that really helps. And I asked you to move in because I wanted a tighter container. And if you're spread out as far as possible from each other, which is what humans do, they spread out as far as possible from each other to utilize all the space, which makes sense from a certain evolutionary point of view. But it doesn't create a tight container. It creates a loose container. So you have to set a strong container when you do transformational work, both in training, but also even in a talk, and also when you do work in a team or in an organization, right? So we didn't have a terribly tight container, but I learned a lot there. Okay, what's next?
I'm the leader. I'm the biggest problem.
Oh, going for the gusto. I'm the leader, so I'm the biggest problem. So let me just fast forward you a little bit here. So I started in Agile and Extreme Programming in 2001. I did that for 2 years. I went to a big financial services company in Virginia. You might not have heard of it, but everybody in the States has heard of it because it's a big popular credit card company. Did 2 years there, and there's lots of interesting things to talk about there. Started, my job has always been in the Agile community to bring things from outside the Agile community into the Agile community. So I'm about the first person to talk about organizational culture back in 2006, about organizational change, been the same time frame, that started talking about leadership in a different kind of a way, that started talking about spiral dynamics, which eventually led to Lalo reinventing organizations. But we'd been talking about spiral dynamics for a long time before Lalo came along. So, and then I got trained as a professional coach really early, before almost anybody else did, in like 2006. Got trained as a relationship systems coach in 2008, 2007. So I was sort of I was trained in organization development. So I had different kind of experiences that I knew would be helpful in this environment. Most people in the Agile community were IT people or project managers or whatever. They don't know about organizational change. They know the brunt of organizational change. They know what doesn't work because they've become victimized by it, right? But they didn't study it in school, or they didn't train on it professionally. So my job was to bring in those outside kind of disciplines into the Agile world because we needed them. So Lisa Atkins and I brought in professional coaching in a big way. That's where, just as I'm doing this, that's the green quote there next to me. You call yourself an Agile coach, but you don't know the first thing about coaching. Now, Lisa used to say that I said this to her. Not the way I remember it exactly. I'm not sure that that's what I really said. Because I almost certainly didn't say you, pointing at her. I was talking about Agile coaches in general who at that point, really didn't know that there was a world of professional coaching. And I was like, hello. Those both people have been trained in that. Maybe we should pay attention to them. So that was in like 2008. And then in 2010, Lisa's book, Coaching Agile Teams, came out. And she said, you're the only one that can run this company with me, or whatever's going to happen from the wave of coaching Agile teams, because she knew it was going to be very popular, and it was. So we started doing that, just the two of us, not even full-time in 2010, and it grew every year. And our goal was to, I'm going to hit the whole thing here, I think, what would it mean to make Agile coaching a real profession? That was our mission, basically, is to try to make Agile coaching a profession, not a loose assemblage. I mean, people talk about, anybody can hang their shingle out as an Agile coach. And that's still true, but most people are fairly sophisticated more than that, and they know that it requires more training than that and more skills. And they, we created the Agile Coaching Competency Framework, which is a way for a coach to see the different skills, facilitation and coaching and mentoring and training, to see the different things they need to know how to do. So we built up a really strong company, I think, and a strong brand, and it was really satisfying. It was really pleasing to see how much people responded to it and how much difference it made. Like Suzanne's comment about that, it was not unusual. I mean, we heard that a lot, and that's like, I mean, do you know how lucky I am to have that happen, like, regularly? To be able to have a profession where you get to, people say that was an amazingly transformational experience. It's, I mean, because it's not me. It's not me that did that. But I get to, kind of bask in that. So, we changed the Agile coaching industry, or the Agile coaching profession. And so the next thing that we wanted to do, that I was mainly the visionary when I was writing this book called Coaching the Agile Enterprise at the time. And I realized I needed to bring in integral theory, Ken Wilber, this stuff. And Lisa often would complain about or bemoan the fact that she wasn't practicing in the field, that she was, we were now just trainers for the most part. We did a little bit of consulting, but mainly we were trainers. And we encountered people's problems as Scrum Masters and Agile coaches all the time, indirectly. We knew exactly what they thought about it, what their problems were, and so forth. But and so we wanted to do more. We wanted to start a consulting company that practiced the kind of things that we were talking about. And I was Lisa and I started out as co-presidents, and then a couple years in, we decided that I should be the CEO and she would be the president. And and it wasn't, that arc wasn't done yet. The arc of Agile Coaching Institute was not quite done, and I wanted to start transformation before it was done. And my vision was to be the CEO of both organizations and to have two very strong women who would be presidents of each. And that tested my leadership in a really big way. When you want to do a transformation like that, because it was a really big transformation, and this is what I now tell leaders that are embarking on a transformation is, if you really want to change everything, if you want to just do an Agile installation, okay, that's one thing. I mean, you don't need to be involved in that. Just authorize it, write the check or whatever, get out of the way. If you're going to do an installation, you don't need to be involved in that. But if you actually want to do a transformation, if you're not just using that as a buzzword, if you actually want to change your organization and create organizational agility, you're going to have to change everything, aren't you? And guess what? You are the biggest problem. How could it be otherwise? A system is designed to get exactly the results that it gets. If you want fundamentally different results, you've got to fundamentally restructure yourself. And it's always the leader's problem first. How could it be otherwise? The leader sets the cap on the consciousness of the organization. And so we started studying the leadership circle, particularly Bob Anderson, Bill Adams. And they talk about that. I'm the problem. And in this instance, I was definitely the problem. I was the person that didn't. Well, there was a lot of things involved that I'm not going to go into all the details of that, but it was a very difficult transition. You know, ACI had an extremely strong culture, very very clear about its direction, about its processes, about its methodologies. You know, we didn't. You know, we were trained at the Coaches Training Institute. We were trained in ORSC, Organizational Relationship Systems Coaching. Most of us had been through the CTI leadership program, and those were our methodologies. And the benefit of that is that it creates cohesiveness, it creates a clarity around what you're going to do, because you're not just taking everything willy-nilly, right? The downside is that it can exclude people. So we face some of those challenges in trying to differentiate another organization. And it got very involved in my own personal psychology and dynamics and stuff, and it became a disaster. And we really are hitting all of them. It led to the spiritual meltdown for me, what I call a spiritual meltdown. It took the shape for me of a depression, of a very severe depression. And I had to withdraw from the whole situation for quite a while. And it left some hard feelings, some difficult, some ruptured relationships. None fatal, I think, but it created a lot more pain than it should have, or than it would have been nice. Starting with me, I suffered probably the most, but I certainly, my lack of leadership led to pain for other people, and not realizing the vision. And it was also the beginning. You know, I often joke to people, be careful about naming a company transformation, because it's going to happen to you. Especially when you're saying leaders go first, right? Look in the mirror. How could it be otherwise, right? So this path, I started on the path of launching transformation and while still leading ACI 4 years ago, actually, right around the time that I was in Scotland. And it didn't really culminate until like June. We launched transformation in June of 2016. And gradually I came back from my depression and trying to think about what I really want to say that would be helpful to you or of interest. Especially the last 9 months has been for me a period of deep going into my own psychology, my ancestors, because our ancestors, our family lineages actually trap us more than Western psychology knows, actually. That's the systemic constellation work that I've been studying for a long time, but I especially went into an intensive program about 9 months ago, actually almost a year ago. So I've been doing a lot of clearing out, which created a much deeper connection for me with my Scottish ancestors and my Italian ones and my Irish ones and my English ones and my German ones. And that's helped me move to a place where I'm no longer I'm no longer willing to compromise. I have a really big mission in this world. You know, the Agile coaching Agile teams class we did is just the beginning of the transformation that I'm going to be leading and facilitating for people. And let me tell you a little bit about psychological development training with leaders. So how many people know the Leadership Circle? Have you heard of that, Leadership Circle profile? People that have been in that class have. There's 3 levels of psychological development that leaders, there's more than that, but mainly something called socialized mind, and then self-authoring mind, and then self-transforming mind. So and this has a point. So socialized mind, we incorporate the opinions and views of everybody else. Our family, our religion, our professional group, our boss. And we judge what we do based on, do they like it? Authored by other. Self-authoring, we develop our own principles. We have our own things that we do. We live by our own beliefs, and we are interested in the feedback of other people, but we don't use that as the measuring stick of whether we did a good job or not. We use our own internal criteria as the measure of whether we did a good job. We are authored by ourselves. Self-transforming mind then is a totally different thing. We start to question, am I even the one that could make decisions about what I do? And do I have the best perspective? What biases do I have? We ask more often, how could I be wrong about this? We cultivate people around us that can challenge us instead of people that will tell us what we want to hear. And that is what I describe as being authored by spirit. Because my experience, at least, is that the world wants me to do certain things, whether I want to do them or not. The world wants me to teach, the world wants me to do transformational work, and the world wants me to do work with people that are on the cutting edge, because that's who I work with the best. Just making sense? You with me? A little story. This summer, I worked with a leadership team. Michelle and I worked with a leadership team at a big pharmaceutical company. And they use the Leadership Circle profile. Leadership Circle is a 360 instrument. It gives you really, really good data. If a leader wants to change, getting an LCP, a Leadership Circle profile, will give them the data to change. They'll see exactly who they are, their psychology, and working with a coach and working with a team process, it changes people's lives in a big way. It changes their leadership. So this team, a business unit, didn't feel ready to use the LCP, to use this 360. What I know about the work that we do is that we've got to use that data, or we don't have any leverage to actually work with somebody to change their team or to change their leadership. Just like a self-assessment or just, talking, that doesn't do it. I know that. And they said, nah, we're not ready to do that. Red flag, right? That's a red flag of, they're not the right client. Then we had meetings with the sponsor, and we had meetings with her boss. She was the chief of staff. We had meetings with her boss. Her boss didn't come to a meeting. We couldn't get kind of alignment. We were sort of always fighting them. They were always changing everything about, the engagement and what was going to happen, blah, 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 blah. Does this sound like a good client? Sound like they're ready to change? No, they're not. And they're certainly not ready to change the way that we work with them. I don't have a lot of patience, okay? I'm just not a patient man. And so I am from a certain point of view. I'm a really patient man. But for working with clients, one of my clients said, what I took as an extreme compliment, if you don't want to change, don't call Michael. because that's the kind of guy I am. So that's not for everybody. You know, it shouldn't be for everybody. That's just great. You know, when you're in the business like this, you need to find who your client is, not who everybody else is. You can't be all things to all people. The more focused you are, that was the lesson of ACI for me. We were really focused on Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, Agile managers, end of discussion. We're going to do these 2 classes mainly. We're going to have a couple of Agile classes. That's it. You know, it was really successful because everybody knew exactly what we did. Agile Coaching Institute. Hello? Is that clear? What we do? Right? Not Agile for all. Agile, you know, whatever. You know, boom. So I knew this was not a good client. But we were a little hungry. We were a little desperate. We were a little, you know, this or that. You know, all the things that go on for you guys. And so we decided to do it. Well, we had a great day the first day, telling them all kinds of good things about themselves, being really positive. And then the second day, we got into the difficulties. And guess what happened? We didn't have any hardcore data to confront them with about what their leadership really, how it impacted things. And we saw the team system squirm under the, you know, just the reflection. We didn't go after them. It was just a reflection of, this seems like it's a problem. It seems like you're not communicating about this, or it seems like some people want this to shift. And you could see the system just sit there and go, what are we going to do now? You could see them literally squirming. And then they went back to business as usual. I mean, they made a really clear decision. The leader blasted somebody who was trying to kind of challenge her power, you know, put him in his place. The whole room shut down. We left there. It was very uncomfortable. It was an interesting seed for a future time. But that was not, you know, it was like, no, I'm not going to work with people that are not ready. That's crazy for me. For you, you might have a much more patience. You might have a much longer term, you know, kind of approach. And if that works for you and you feel good doing that, if it feels like it's integrity for you to do that, then you should. Because it takes all kinds of people in this world, right, to deal with all the different kinds of people there are. So I'm not promoting my style per se. I'm only saying you need to be consistent with your style. You need to be consistent with who you are. And I didn't do that in this case, and that led to a disaster. The very next day, the universe brought me a different client that wasn't even a client really, but that wanted to, that was interested in doing this constellation work. And we did this fantastic work together. Like they didn't even know me. I knew 2 of the guys of 7. But that was the right client. So I went to, here's the wrong client, and you knew it, but you didn't pay attention, to here's the right client. Yeah. So it's helped me create a clarity for myself of my work is doing shadow consulting. Shadow consulting is about working with coaches and consultants in their client, not going into the client a lot of times, but working with people who are willing to be at the cutting edge, because you all are willing to be at the cutting edge. Do you agree with that? You're in your organization in the place you are because you're further ahead than most people are. Is that true? Come on, admit it. I mean, from some point of view, not from some ultimate spiritual point of view, maybe, but from a certain evolution of consciousness, you're further ahead than other people in your organization. That's why you're so frustrated. That's why you raised your hand to say, yes, I'm going to do this Agile thing, and that's why the organization squashed you down, because they're not ready for that. Okay. I better quit while I'm behind. All right. What questions or reactions do you have?
Sounds like it's back to the half-hearted. Don't do anything half-hearted.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So absolutely, exactly. So if you're in an organization and they're going at a slower pace than you want, but the path still has heart for you, then you should stay. There's nothing wrong with, you know, resistance or whatever. You don't judge it by an external standard. You judge it by an internal standard. Does it have heart for you? And what you're doing specifically, right?
How do you personally separate whether or not a path has heart versus ambition?
Versus ambition or without ambition?
I'm not sure. I guess I'm just having trouble separating the two.
Yeah, yeah. What can you say a little more? Because I don't have a pat answer to that. I haven't thought about that, but I'd be happy to think about it with you.
Well, in your first statement, you basically said that you should follow the path without, or the quote was saying you should follow the path without ambition.
Without fear or ambition.
How do you interpret that?
For me, ambition would be gratifying my ego in some way. You know, and that's a hard one because, you know, like doing a talk like this could look like ambition, could look like ego gratification. You know, and you know, it could be. I'm trying to expose myself some to in the service of provoking something in you, and I might or might not do that. So there's a continual learning process with that and feedback process. So some of it has to do with setting up a good container that will reflect if you're being ambitious or not, right? It's having colleagues that will give you feedback, or it's having a meditation practice that would help you see that. You can tell it too. I mean, you know that the electromagnetics of this organ, you got any idea what the electromagnetics of this organ compared to this organ are? How many times, which do you think is stronger electromagnetically? Heart or the brain? The heart. How many times?
Construct the head with would love to think we can do that with the heart.
5,000 times. You know, your heart can sense this whole room. You can sense this room before you get here. You're not conscious of it probably, but you can. So your heart always knows. It's only a matter of having practices like stillness or meditation or reflection or something that puts you in touch with this. No?
I'm just still trying to figure out how to interpret that myself.
Yeah.
It's a thing, really.
So you say that your heart is more perceptive than your mind?
Yes, much more. And your heart is much more trustworthy than your mind. It knows more about. Einstein has a famous quote about it that we've allowed the servant to become the master. I mean, the mind is a great servant. It's just not a good master. It will always screw you up almost. You know, the heart, I mean, we have three brains actually, this one, and this one, right? There's lots of neurotransmitters or neurons in the heart and in the gut. That's what we talk about, having a gut feeling about something, because we know stuff here. And you need to bring your whole body online to really, to really be effective as a human being, as a leader. You got any questions, problems, things you want me to take a crack at?
On your quote about
Kira.
Spiritual Meltdown and Phoenix Rising, the Phoenix Rising bit, is this your ability now to feel what you should be doing, or
Yeah.
you should be working with, so in your authority?
Yeah. Just like a kind of a, it's always been in me, but it's really strong. The commitment to, I don't have time to waste. I'm not going to waste it on clients that are, for me, half-hearted or mediocre in some way. You know, I want to work, like when I work individually with a client, if I can't see that client's brilliance and greatness, I'm not interested in working with them because I'm not a good coach for them. I need to see it without even working. Does that make sense? If I can see it without even working, I'm going to be a great coach for them. Like I plenty of times I say, I'd love to coach you. You know, that's called claiming a coaching client. You don't just, it's not always about, the person coming to the coach. You have to be careful to not be pushy about that, but there's an electromagnetic thing that happens with some coaching clients that, and that's like, there's so much juice and edge in that. That's really exciting. It's really lively. It's really creative, and that's what I'm not gonna do work that's not like that. And now I just feel like so bold and like I'm just not going to put up with poverty or scarcity or fear in myself or whatever. And the minute that I made some internal decisions about where I am right now, things started showing up. I was sort of worried, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get work if I make some changes. I got to gin up new things, blah 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 blah. And I made some internal decisions, and boom, people just started showing up. I mean, I didn't even do anything. The universe started coming at me, because when we get clear about what we're supposed to do, the universe goes, excellent. That's what I was wanting for you. So good. Here you go. When we fight it, then the universe makes it hard for us. It's just a mirror of what we're supposed. Does that make sense? No. So. Yeah, I'm ready to do great work and the best work of my life, and I'm just getting started.
I think some of what you say, it comes with age
Yes.
and experience. No, seriously.
Not that I'm old, but yes.
No, but I'm talking about myself.
Yes.
I think as you get older, yes, there is element of, look, I haven't got that long, I'm going to do what I want to do. But also the fact that maybe you get less distraction, you might not worry about, oh, I've got to pay my mortgage, I better do this, or I've got the kids to look after, they're standing off their own feet. So you feel more empowered, and then you do more of what you think is the right thing. You're more brave.
Yes.
You don't
Yes,
feel,
absolutely.
and the minute you become brave, you actually become more confident.
Yes.
And that confidence,
Yes.
it sort of blows, and everybody notices.
Yes,
and
that's exactly right.
it comes back to you.
And guess what? You could have done that when you were younger, actually. You just didn't believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's you might not do it till you're my age, and that's okay. I mean, how could I fault you? It took me this long, but I'm hoping that maybe you can learn from my mistakes a little bit and like go, I could do this now, because you can. Thank you. Yeah.
So do you have a filter on clients that is to do with the impact that they and their business is trying to have on the world?
Say a little bit more what you mean by that,
So
or give me an example, maybe.
would you work for a client that is, developing something that was
Like nuclear weapons or something, or tobacco, or. Probably not. But I wouldn't want to make any rules about that exactly. But certainly that would be a consideration for me. So.
probably not, you wouldn't do it.
Probably wouldn't do it.
Not, you wouldn't have a filter.
No, probably wouldn't do it. But so my purpose is how many people know Frederick Laloux and Reinventing Organizations? Spiral Dynamics? No? Okay. My purpose on this planet is to bring a lot of people to help them raise up to a much higher level of consciousness. So it would more depend, frankly, on that than it would on what they were producing or whatever. So it's conceivable that people in, a tobacco company, that you could have an impact that would be monumental. Who knows? I mean, I wouldn't want to make up a rule about it. Would I consider it? Of course, absolutely. It wouldn't be consistent for me. And right now, my target client is transforming the transformers. So I'm most interested in enterprise coaches and transformation leaders, because that's where the greatest leverage in this world is, in my view. It's where I have the greatest leverage, and it's the people that have the greatest leverage. So if I can help the transformers become way, way, way better, that's going to make a big ripple impact in the world. I just got done in this week-long boot camp for 15 enterprise coaches, and we just had a check-in call tonight, and they are completely different. It's unbelievable. It's really cool. I mean, just before the call, you could feel they had such a tight container. They were so in love with each other that you could feel this energetic blossom outside of the call. Before the call started, an hour before, they were starting to text each other on Slack, and you could just feel the juice coming. I could barely sleep when I was there. I was so excited to hang out with them and to do stuff with them. It was like nonstop. And so that's when I'm not going to not live like that. I'm not going to pull back from that. Why should I? Right? Why should you?
You got a question from Mike on the live stream.
Oh, okay. Hi, Mike.
Mike, where do you feel empathy fits in multidisciplinary, cross-functional teams? Could UX and design thinking help with that?
Well, that's interesting. That's kind of so empathy is a inner experience kind of a thing, and it's a relationship consciousness kind of a thing. And you're talking about, I think, using practices, Mike, from the right-hand quadrants, to help augment that. Yeah, that totally makes sense. In Integral, we would talk about the ability to take. We had an interview with Ken Wilber about 6 weeks ago, and he said there's two things that are important for people to develop into integral leadership. One is the ability to take to take other people's perspective, and UX and design thinking certainly has you take other people's perspective. It has you take the perspective of the user. So that's certainly going to help. I don't know if it's going to help you within your team, but it's going to help you, with the client, with the customer, have greater empathy with them. And I think the question was, what's the impact of empathy, or what was the original part of it?
Where do you feel empathy fits in these multidisciplinary, cross-functional, agile teams?
Yeah. So where does empathy fit? Empathy is essential for team functioning. Right? It's how we have compassion for each other, or how we have that's what the container is about in a lot of ways, is compassion. That's the glue that holds the container of a team together. In a lot of ways, if you don't have empathy for each other, forget it. I mean, you also have to have a common purpose, and you have to have something that drives you, so it's not just empathy. That's just a feel-good thing on a certain level. You have to have a purpose. You have to have a right-hand quadrant thing, too. But
Up there, some don't write a book.
Yes, I did. How many people have been waiting for the book that I'm writing? In most audiences, that number is even bigger. Sometimes a lot bigger. And whoa! I guess that's a message. I'm not sure what the message is, but oh, nice. I signed a book contract in 2012. I'm only 6 years, 5 months late. What's that amongst friends? What?
Depends, did they pay you?
No. I don't know if you know it, but nobody makes money from writing a book except for people that sell millions of copies. It's sort of a joke, actually. Writing a book is a business card. It's not a money-making venture. It's the best business card you can have in this world, I think. But that's what it is. So it used to be called Coaching the Agile Enterprise, and I released 100 pages of it in January 2014, I think, and it was available online for a little bit until I got attacked by somebody for quoting their book meticulously and with complete references, and they didn't want me to quote their book. So I had to pull it back. And Michelle and I have rewritten that section of it, and we're rewriting the second section of it. We've decided to cut the book in half from where it was going to go originally, and so we have a December 1st deadline, which should put it out May 2020. So that's probably a pretty good date, actually. As long as it's in this lifetime, I'll be happy. I was just talking to a woman last night who is an author who's written 3 books, and she's cognizing, birthing her 4th. This hasn't yet come out. It hasn't yet. I don't think she started the process of writing, but you birth a book before you start writing it. And she agreed, don't write a book unless you have to. The caveat is unless you have to. If you have to, you have to. And I had to, so. It's now called Transformation, Upgrading the Leader's Operating System for Agile Business Transformation. And it's about integral, and it's about leader first, and it's about upgrading the leader's operating system. I already have actually a second and a third book in mind now. I know, crazy, right? But see, so honestly, that was not it was the book that I wanted to write in 2012, and maybe in 2014, and it's not the book I want to write anymore. I want to write a totally different book. So I got to get this one done though. So, but that's you can see December 1st, right? Doesn't that feel fairly close? Scarily close. So we could be done, but we don't have to be done.
Not necessarily directly related, but I'm curious. Do you think the illusion of Agile in a large organization is worse than lack of Agile?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Did you hear that? Is the illusion of Agile worse than the lack of it? In some ways, yeah. I mean, that could certainly get, you have to know a lot more facts to know that. But can I conceive of that being true? Absolutely. Because, well, it has to do with Lalo and spiral dynamics. So just really briefly, an achievement orange organization is one that's fundamented in achievement, in results, in profit, in goals, in accountability. And that kind of organization, which is the mainstay of Lloyd's Bank, is almost certainly an achievement orange organization, as are almost all the Fortune 500 companies, Global 1000 even. Next level of development up is pluralistic green, which is about, it's perverted into political correctness and identity politics and stuff, but it's about plurality. It's about, there's no one right way. It's about diversity. It's about holding a bigger perspective on things. It's about consensus, decision-making instead of the boss making the decision. So it's a more evolved value system to come from, and Agile comes from that value system, fundamentally, and it's implemented in achievement orange organizations. And so there's always a cultural clash, right? But what pushes an organization or a person up is that their current way of dealing with things doesn't work, and they get dissatisfying results, right? And that creates motivation, the natural motivation to evolve. So Agile when Agile is put into orange organizations, it gets dumbed down, and so people treat the stand-up as a status meeting, and they, are worried about cycle time, not about value production. They worry about they don't actually believe customer collaboration over contract negotiation. They believe the opposite. That's just what Orange does. I mean, that's the way Orange thinks. Nothing wrong with that per se, but it doesn't work for Agile. And it doesn't get organizations to what they want, which is organizational agility, because that's really hard to achieve with just an achievement orange orientation. So not having it in an organization would create more pain. It gets anesthetized by putting in Agile, right? It anesthetizes certain elements that go, oh yeah, thank God we have Agile, but it's a floundering, it's a joke, right? It's a pseudo-Agile or whatever they call it. So I can imagine it could be.
I was interested at the beginning when you were saying who is coach, who is product owner, by hand of being troublemaker, because I'm none of them. So, you go as a business analyst with a contract to a project, then we're not running Agile or anything, but you've got the mindset. So you sort of try and influence and wherever you can, bring people together, collaborate, test scenarios, make sure you've got all the sort of different things. So is there a name for this other than troublemaker? Or?
Well, you sound like you're describing being a leader.
I'm nobody. I'm not trying to.
Well, but anybody can be a leader. Leader doesn't have to do with position. Manager has to do with position. Leader has to do with, in an Agile organization, you want leadership to show up all over the place, right? And in a teal organization, it does. That's one of the definitions of a teal organization. So, you sound like you're exhibiting or your impulse is to lead, to influence, to take people somewhere. Yes.
I was very social, how do you define an agile team? Like, if a team
Is working on multiple products, you call as agile team.
If they're working on multiple product backlogs, did you say?
no, one team
Yes.
is working on, like, for example,
Around 10 team members,
Yeah.
10 people, of which each of them are working on different products. We call it as agile.
Doesn't sound like it. I mean, I don't want to get into a debate about what's Agile or not, but it doesn't sound like it.
what's typical, ideal agile team look like? They work on single product? Or
Yeah, sure. They have one product owner, and a product owner could have more than one team, but a team can't have more than one product owner. I mean, that just doesn't. I mean, I don't mean that that's absolutely impossible, but it would take a really disciplined, high-functioning organization to support that. Usually, it's a cop-out. Usually, it's a lie.
So, you provide a solution, for example, if a team is doing that, any solution, like, will it be like multiple teams should be formed out of one single team in that scenario?
It would require us to get into too much detail, probably, for me to give a good answer to that. I'm sorry. I don't think I can be terribly illuminating about that. I'm sorry. Last call. Last call for questions, not last call for whiskey.
Okay. Let's go. So,
Michael, thank you very much for sharing that. I think when Laz and Suzanne first got in touch with yourself and I saw your topic, I was like intrigued what it's going to be about, and it's been thoroughly. I think it's very obviously very deep. I think what this is really getting. The heart of this is very deep, and which is in the path that feels your heart is into the right path. And it's a very very important point, I think. And, from my own personal experiences, sometimes people go down the wrong paths and their heart's not into it. It doesn't end up always good. So thank you very much, Michael. So Michael, as I mentioned, he's been up in Findhorn, up in Scotland for the last about a week. And tomorrow he's heading off to Stockholm, I believe. So Michael's came all the way down here to Edinburgh to talk to us tonight, and it's very much appreciated. And as a little token of a typical Scottish jester, and you just mentioned it a little while ago, whiskey.
Oh my God!
present to you on behalf of everybody here at Lean Agile Edinburgh. As a thank you, I'd like to. Can you grab that? I'd like to present this bottle of single malt.
Excellent.
So
oh my God.
It's all the way from Lafroig.
Lafroig.
Yeah. So there you go.
Thank you. Thank you. That's an unexpected pleasure.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. And for we're about to go into we'll do a few wrap-ups just now, talk about a few other things before we head off. But later on tonight, I think a few of us are heading down to Monty's, just basically outdoor, turn left, head towards Haymarket, or on your left, and maybe we'll have a few drinks in there as well. So, shout-outs. Does anybody have a shout-out they'd like to share with the rest of the group here? I know Alan has one, who's maybe on his phone right now. Yep. If anybody else has a shout out, just to share any news or any events.
I wasn't on my phone, I was on the live stream. So I didn't gather my thoughts before I came up here. So you'll know us from doing the live streams, but Product Forge organise hackathons. Our next big event is in February, and it's a long way away, but it's Europe's largest health hackathon. If you're interested in digital health or social care, we'd like to get you along, get you involved. We have everyone from clinicians and other health professionals through to developers, designers, product managers, entrepreneurs, and anyone that I mentioned. So if that's of interest, the ticket sales are opening tomorrow, or you can follow us on Product Forge if you want any information about that. Thank you very much.
One from myself. Some people raised their hands of being the product owners. I think here there's a few folk being product owners. So, Cal, we're running our next product owner training in November 25th, 26th. There's some postcards and some bits you might have noticed outside there. So if anybody is interested in product owner training or knows somebody in an organisation who benefit from that, please get in touch, and we can. And we're all going to offer a discount to Lean Agile Edinburgh members as well. Just get in touch and we'll pass it on. Unless there's any other shout-outs? Yeah.
So if one event this week wasn't enough for you, Skyscanner's got an event on Wednesday with the Agile Scotland group, looking at radical candors. There's a few speakers going to talk about radical candor on Wednesday at Skyscanner at 6. So we look for Agile Scotland on Eventbrite. So there are some tickets. It's all free, I think.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I think it's a free event. There's a donation to mental health charity, I think, as well. Great. Okay. Next meeting. I know we're at Nucleus Financial next meeting, November something. I can't remember the exact date. Obviously, watch at the meetup.com page to get the details. We've got a few things lined up. But again, anybody that's got any ideas or want to talk, or any ideas of future meetup, please use that link to submit it. So, without any further ado, I'd like to again thank Michael for talking tonight. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thanks again to Product Forge for the live stream. Big thank you to Lloyds Banking Group, Scottish Widows for hosting tonight. And thank you all for coming. Thanks very much. And see you next one. Thank you.
Thank you.